You check your phone. Nothing. You open the chat again, just to look at the last message, yeah, maybe this weekend, sent 2 days ago. You read it for the fourth time like it's going to say something new. You're not dating this person. You're not dating this person either. You've never had the conversation. You just hang out, sometimes text for hours, sometimes disappear from each other's radar for a week, and neither of you has ever said the word relationship out loud. If someone asked you what this is, you genuinely wouldn't know what to call it. That's a situationship. And if it feels worse than an actual breakup sometimes, that's not you being dramatic. There's a real reason ambiguity hurts more than rejection does, and it has almost nothing to do with how much you like the person. Start with the phone checking itself, because that part isn't random. Psychologist B.F. Skinner ran experiments in the 1950s on what happens when a reward doesn't arrive on a predictable schedule. Pigeons that got food every single time they pressed a lever pecked at it occasionally, calmly, like checking the mail. But pigeons that got food only sometimes, no pattern, no way to predict when, pecked at that lever obsessively, thousands of times, long after the food stopped coming entirely. Unpredictable reward doesn't just motivate behavior. It hijacks it. A text back from someone you're official with is a predictable reward, good, but calm. A text back from someone in a situationship is a slot machine. You don't know if it's coming in 5 minutes or 3 days, warm or one word cold, so your brain treats every notification like it might be the jackpot. That's why you check the phone. That's why silence from this one specific person can occupy more of your mental bandwidth than a partner who texts you every morning like clockwork. You've probably lived the exact shape of that experiment without ever hearing Skinner's name. 3 days of nothing, and you've mostly moved on, told yourself it's fine, started planning your weekend without them, and then a message shows up out of nowhere. Hey, saw this and thought of you, with something small and thoughtful attached. It costs them 10 seconds. It resets you completely. Now you're back in it, refreshing the chat, rereading old messages, wondering if this means something shifted. That single well-timed crumb after a long silence is worth more, neurologically, than the same message would be from someone who texts you every day, not because the person changed, but because your brain just got the exact kind of unpredictable payoff that keeps a slot machine profitable. Now add a second mechanism, because unpredictability alone doesn't explain why it's the not knowing itself that eats at people. In the 1920s, a psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik noticed something strange about waiters at a Vienna cafe. They could recall a customer's entire complicated order in perfect detail right up until the bill was paid, and then it vanished from memory almost instantly. Finished business gets filed away. Unfinished business stays loaded in working memory, quietly running in the background, waiting for resolution. It's why an argument you actually resolved stops bothering you within a day, but one that just trailed off unfinished can replay in your head for weeks. A situationship is, structurally, one long unresolved thing. There's no conversation that closes it, no label that defines it, no moment where you both agreed on what it is, so your brain never gets to file it away. You can be in one for 6 months and still be running background processes on it every single day, not because it's more intense than a defined relationship, but because it never got to finish loading. Here's the part that surprises people most: breakups,
okay.
as painful as they
Just
are,
breathe.
come with a script. There are songs about them,
Here.
friends who know exactly what to say, a whole cultural category of getting over an ex. A therapist named Pauline Boss coined a term for grief that doesn't have the, she called it ambiguous loss, originally describing families of missing soldiers and people caring for a parent with dementia, someone physically present but psychologically gone, or gone but never confirmed dead. No funeral, no closure ritual, because the loss itself was never officially defined. Losing a situationship is a smaller stakes version of exactly that. The person might still be in your group chat, might still like your posts, might still text you at 1 a.m. sometimes, so you can't grieve it the way you'd grieve a real breakup, because nothing ever technically ended. You're stuck mourning something you're not allowed to call a loss. Zoom out further and this starts to look less like a modern dating glitch and more like an old alarm system going off in the wrong environment.
But how
For
does
most
that
of
apply
human
to the group
history,
dynamic?
people lived in groups
It
small
ensures
enough that
survival
everyone's
during
role toward
scarcity.
everyone else was common knowledge: who was a mate, who was a rival, who owed you something, who you owed. That clarity mattered because ambiguous social bonds were genuinely risky. If you didn't know where you stood with someone, you didn't know whether to invest more time and effort, defend them, or protect yourself from them. Uncertainty about a relationship wasn't just uncomfortable back then, it was a signal that something needed to be resolved before you could safely move forward, so the brain evolved to treat unclear relationship status as a problem demanding constant attention, not something to shrug off. Modern dating built an entire category specifically designed to never resolve that signal. Situationships exist because ambiguity is, for one side at least, genuinely convenient. It gets you closeness without the accountability, attention without the commitment, and an easy exit with no hard conversation required. But the other person's nervous system doesn't know it's being kept in a deliberately unresolved state on purpose. It just knows the status is unclear, and unclear used to mean pay attention. This isn't settled. So it keeps paying attention. 4 weeks. Sometimes months, that's the actual cost, and it's bigger than the obvious one. It's not just the hours spent decoding a text that took 9 hours to arrive. It's the friendships that get shorter and more distracted because part of your attention is always reserved for a phone that might buzz. It's turning down someone who actually is available, because you're still technically seeing a person who's never once used the word we. It's the strange kind of exhaustion of feeling like you're in something and also completely alone in it. Because there's no one to check in with about how it's going, there's no one to check in about. There's a small, telling moment that shows up in almost every situationship, and it's the conversation with a friend. They ask the obvious question, so are you two together?
The project manager?
And you find yourself doing something strange, hedging.
It's complicated.
Kind of.
I'm not sure.
It's complicated. We're just seeing where it goes. You watch your friend's face try to process an answer that doesn't fit any category they know, and some part of you feels embarrassed, not because anything is wrong with you, but because you can't even describe your own life in a sentence a friend can respond to. That's not a small thing. Having language for your relationships is how you get support for them, advice, comfort, a second opinion when something feels off. Take the label away and you also quietly take away everyone else's ability to help you make sense of it, so you end up processing the whole thing alone, in your own head, on a loop. None of this means every undefined relationship needs an urgent label, or that some situations aren't genuinely fine to leave open for a while. Early dating is allowed to be unresolved for a bit, and not every connection needs a title to be real. The distinction that actually matters is whether the ambiguity is temporary and mutual, or whether it's become the permanent, comfortable arrangement for one person at the expense of the other's peace of mind. One honest way to tell the difference: imagine saying, out loud, exactly what you want from this, not to force a label, just to see what happens to the conversation. If it can survive that sentence, it was probably fine all along. If the thought of asking makes your stomach drop, that reaction is information. It usually means some part of you already knows the answer, and has just been avoiding the one conversation that would finally let your brain close the tab. So the next time you catch yourself rereading a 2-day-old, maybe this weekend, it might be worth asking what you're actually checking for. It's rarely the message itself. It's the resolution.
She finally gathered
And the
courage
honest
to
way to
send
get
a
that isn't
message she'd
another
been
glance at the
drafting
phone,
all
it's the
week.
conversation you've been putting
A
off
weight
having.
lifted instantly.